Today we will venture into the depths of the shadows with 7 horror stories involving dark forests. Prepare to hear chilling tales of trails that disappear into the darkness, unexplained sounds through the trees, and eerie encounters with the unknown when daylight fades. We'll explore stories of hikers, photographers, and adventurers who ventured into the deepest forests and discovered that we're not always alone among the trees. So sit back, make sure all the lights are on, and let's begin this spine-tingling journey. Oh, and before the shadows of the forest reach you, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel and ensures you don't miss out on any terrifying content like this. Let's go. Silent Trail. The sun was starting to set when Megan realized something was wrong. The Rockwall Trail, famous for its views of the Canadian Rockies, should have a fork marked with blue ribbons. They had passed that point on their way just 4 hours before. "Are you sure it's this way?" asked Jason, consulting the map. "I don't remember that rock formation." Megan, Alex, and siblings Jason and Kayla had been planning this hike for months. All experienced, they had chosen a circular route of moderate difficulty. "We definitely stopped by earlier," Megan confirmed. "I remember that fallen tree, but the marker should have been on that post." Alex examined the wooden post. "Look at this," he called, pointing to freshly cut fibers. Someone removed the tape. Recently. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. It was at least 12 kilometers from the parking lot, and the sun was setting quickly. "Probably some idiot playing a joke," Jason suggested. "Let's move on." They continued for another 30 minutes before Kayla stopped abruptly. "That tree, have we passed it before?" "Impossible," Jason replied, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. Alex checked the GPS. "No signal, and we're moving away from the main path." That's when they heard the first crack, a branch breaking in the forest to the right. Everyone froze. "Probably a moose," Megan whispered, but her hand tightened on the pocket knife in her pocket. They decided to return, following in their own footsteps. The light was quickly diminishing, forcing them to turn on flashlights. It was Alex who noticed it first. The footprints. There are others mixing in with ours. In the light of the flashlights, they saw it clearly. A pair of large boots had followed exactly the same path. Even more disturbing, the footprints sometimes strayed into the forest and returned to the trail meters away. "Someone is following us," muttered Kayla. "And he knows the area better than us," Alex added. They accelerated their pace. Jason suggested a shortcut that should take them to a side trail. After 20 minutes, they found a newly installed barbed wire fence, completely blocking the passage. "This shouldn't be here," Jason said, his voice shaking. "I know this area." Megan examined the fence. "That's not park work. Look how hastily it was done." Another slap into the woods, closer this time. And then, the unmistakable sound of a low whistle, a simple, almost childish melody. "We need to run," Alex whispered. They followed parallel to the fence, looking for a passage. The darkness was now almost complete, their flashlights creating cones of light that seemed to attract rather than ward off danger. The whistling continued, sometimes closer, sometimes further away. Finally, the fence ended in a steep ravine. The only option was to go down or go back. "We can't go down this in the dark," Kayla protested. "We can't go back," Megan replied. That's when they saw the light, a single lantern swinging through the trees, approximately 200 meters behind them. Someone was walking calmly towards him, still whistling. With no choice, they began to descend the ravine, slipping on the loose earth. They reached the bottom, where a narrow stream ran between rocks. "Where to now?" gasped Jason. Alex pointed upstream. "Water makes tracking difficult." They followed the stream for almost an hour. The feeling of being watched never diminished. Occasionally they caught a glimpse of flashlight light on the slopes above. "He's not trying to reach us," Megan realized. "It's guiding us." The realization hit the group like ice-cold water. Every detour, every obstacle pushed them deeper into the forest. The stream eventually flowed into a small valley. In the center was a wooden hut. Dim light shone through dirty windows. Civilization, Kayla sighed with relief. "Wait," warned Alex. "Something's not right." They watched the cabin for a few minutes. There were no vehicles visible, no access road, just narrow trails converging into the clearing. "Look," Megan whispered, pointing to the surrounding trees. In the dim light of the moon, they saw shapes hanging from the branches. Initially, they looked like bags, but closer examination revealed the truth: backpacks. Dozens of them, of different colors and sizes, hung like trophies. "They're hiking backpacks," Jason muttered. "Like ours." The cabin door opened. A tall man came out carrying a hunting rifle. He looked directly at where they were hiding and waved. "Welcome," he called out. "You found your way faster than most." The group retreated into the trees. "There's no point running now," the man continued. "The hunt has begun. You have an hour's head start." Without hesitation, the four friends ran back to the stream. Behind them, they heard the man laugh, followed by the sound of a rifle being loaded. "He's playing with us," gasped Kayla. "No," Alex replied. "It's hunting." Three of the four friends managed to escape, finding a road at dawn. Jason was never found. When authorities located the cabin, they found it empty and partially burned. The only evidence was boot prints and, hanging from a tree, a backpack that belonged to Jason. The Rockwall Trail remains open, but rangers check the markings daily. In the last 2 years, 7 hikers have gone missing in nearby areas. The searches continue to the guard's hut. The rain was falling mercilessly when the Parker family saw the cabin between the trees. They had only planned a half-day walk through the Scottish Highlands, but the storm arrived without warning, turning trails into muddy streams. "There," shouted Tom, pointing through the curtain of rain. "It looks like a ranger's cabin." Sarah held her 10-year-old daughter Emma's hand tightly as they ran toward the shelter. The stone and wood structure looked abandoned, but the door was not locked. "Hello?" called Tom, pushing open the heavy door. "Is there anyone?" The interior was surprisingly organized. A cold fireplace dominated the main wall, flanked by shelves filled with books and equipment. Most notable were the stuffed animals. Dozens of them, from tiny squirrels to a majestic eagle, all in realistic poses. "Wow," whispered Emma, looking at the specimens. "They look so real." Sarah felt a shiver. There was something unsettling about the way the animal's glass eyes seemed to follow his movements. "Should we light the fire?" asked Tom. "We're soaked." "I don't know if we should," Sarah hesitated. "We don't know who owns it." "It's a ranger cabin," Tom argued. "They're public shelters." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed. While Tom lit the fire, she explored the cabin, noticing strange details. There were no personal photos, but an entire wall was dedicated to maps of the forest, marked in red. In the kitchen, he found a collection of knives of different sizes, all impeccably clean. "Mommy, look at this," called Emma. The girl pointed to a stuffed deer. "He has something on his neck." Sarah approached and felt her blood run cold. Partially hidden by the fur was a thin silver chain with a pendant, a small heart. "Tom," she called, her voice tense, "I think we should leave." "Why?" "We're finally getting warm," he replied, rummaging through a pile of dry clothes. "Look, there are even clothes we can wear." Sarah examined the items: a red sweater, hiking pants, and thermal socks. Hikers' clothes, not rangers' clothes. The door opened abruptly. A tall man filled the gap. He wore a dark green waterproof coat and carried a shotgun over his shoulder. "Visitors!" he exclaimed with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What a pleasant surprise." "Sorry about the intrusion," hastened Tom. "The storm caught us off guard." "Ian McGregor," replied the man. "Ranger, welcome to my humble home." While Ian prepared tea, Sarah watched him closely. His pale blue eyes kept returning to Emma, who was examining taxidermy tools displayed on a shelf. "Did you make all these animals?" Tom asked. "Every one of them," Ian replied proudly. "Taxidermy is more than a hobby for me. It's a calling." "They're very realistic," Sarah commented, noticing how Ian smiled at the compliment. "The secret is in the eyes," he explained, "and in posture. Each creature has its unique essence." While drinking the tea, Sarah felt a sudden drowsiness. He looked at Tom, who was blinking slowly. Emma, who had received hot chocolate, remained alert. "It's getting late," said Ian. "Why don't you rest? The storm won't pass any time soon." Sarah tried to get up, but her legs felt like lead. "What was in the tea?" he managed to mutter. Ian smiled again. "Just something to help them relax. The best specimens are the ones that don't fight much." Before the darkness engulfed her, Sarah saw Ian approach Emma. "Your daughter has extraordinary eyes," was the last thing he heard. Sarah woke up in a cold basement, tied to a chair. Tom was next to him, unconscious. Above, he heard Emma's voice talking to Ian. "So you use these products to preserve your skin?" asked the girl. "Exactly," replied Ian. "It's a delicate process." Sarah realized that Emma was biding her time. Testing his bonds, he discovered that one was looser. As he freed himself, he saw human shapes partially covered by tarps in the shadows. When he freed one hand, he heard Emma scream. He grabbed a heavy tool and staggered up the stairs. In the cabin, he saw Ian leaning over Emma, who had knocked over a shelf of chemicals. Sarah didn't hesitate. The tool hit Ian's head hard. He fell, motionless. "I knew you would come," said Emma, trembling. "He didn't realize I didn't drink the chocolate." Together they freed Tom and fled into the storm. 3 days later, when the police arrived, the cabin was empty. Ian had disappeared. The only traces were bloodstains and a partially completed female mannequin wearing the same red sweater that Tom had found. The investigation revealed that the real ranger had disappeared. 2 years earlier, in records of missing people in the region, more than a dozen hikers were never found. The cabin has been demolished, but hikers still avoid that part of the forest where a lone light sometimes shines through the trees on stormy nights. Signs. On the tree, the afternoon sun filtered through the branches as Elisa Winters adjusted her macro lens to capture the peculiar texture of a centuries-old oak tree. As a photographer specializing in ancient trees, she had spent the last 3 months documenting rare specimens in the Scottish Highlands for an exhibition in Edinburgh. That's when he noticed something unusual. Small markings carved into the bark, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. Initially, he thought they were natural markings or damage caused by animals, but when he examined neighboring trees, he noticed a deliberate pattern. It looked like a language, he would later report. Symbols repeated in specific sequences, always facing certain directions. Intrigued, Elisa began photographing and mapping the markings. After 2 weeks, I had documented symbols on more than 40 trees. When he organized the photos on his laptop, he realized that they formed a rough map of the forest, with lines converging on a specific point deep in the woods. His professional curiosity overcame caution. On a clear morning in May, equipped with GPS, water, and photographic equipment, Elisa followed the directions of the markings. The path led deeper and deeper into the forest, away from the tourist trails. After 3 hours of walking, the symbols became more frequent. He also noticed other disturbing signs: colorful ribbons tied to low branches, small arrangements of stones in circular formations, and occasionally darkened patches on the ground that looked like the remains of campfires. That's when he heard distant voices. Instinctively, Elisa turned off her phone and approached cautiously. In a natural clearing, partially hidden by dense trees, there was a camp. 5 large tents arranged in a circle around a central area with an unlit campfire. Most disturbing, however, were the people. Approximately 15 individuals moved around. The camp, some wearing white robes with green symbols that resembled the carvings on the trees. In the center of the clearing, a stylized, tree-shaped wooden structure stood, decorated with objects that Elisa could not clearly identify. Hiding behind a dense bush, she adjusted her telephoto camera and began discreetly photographing. That's when he saw the others, 6 people, apparently tourists due to their clothes and backpacks, sitting in a corner of the camp. They were conscious, but their movements seemed lethargic, as if they were sedated. A man tried to get up, only to be gently pushed back by one of the robed members. They seemed disoriented, Elisa explained, like they didn't fully understand where they were or what was going on. As he watched, a tall man in a more elaborate robe began to speak to the group. Although she couldn't hear clearly, Elisa managed to capture phrases about purification, communion with nature, and necessary sacrifice. Panic grew when she realized that the tourists were part of some ritual. Slowly walking back, Elisa stepped on a dry branch. The crack, amplified by the silence of the forest, made several heads turn in his direction. Abandoning discretion, he ran through the forest, following his GPS back to the main trail. Behind her, alarmed voices and sounds of pursuit. He managed to reach his car and drive to the nearest police station in Aviemore. Initially skeptical, the police changed their attitude upon seeing the photographs. An operation was quickly mounted, but when authorities arrived at the site, they found only the remains of the camp. Cold ash, tent marks, and, unsettlingly, tourists' personal belongings, passports, wallets, phones, neatly piled beneath the tree-shaped structure. The subsequent investigation revealed that 6 tourists had been reported missing in the region in recent weeks. 2 Americans, a German couple, and 2 Japanese students. Everyone had mentioned plans to photograph or explore remote areas of the forest. Forensic analysis of the ash and soil revealed plant residues with hallucinogenic and sedative properties, including species not native to Scotland. The markings on the trees have been identified as variations of ancient symbols related to fertility cults and sacrifice, some dating back to the Bronze Age. 3 weeks later, 2 of the missing tourists were found wandering disoriented near a country road, severely dehydrated and confused. Their fragmentary testimonies spoke of plant ceremonies, visions of the sacred tree, and purification by fire and water. They could not identify their captors or precisely locate the camp. Scottish authorities continue to search for the other 4 tourists and the cult members. The markings on the trees have been documented and are being studied by experts in ancient religions and Celtic symbolism. For Elisa Winters, the experience permanently transformed her relationship with the forests she loved photographing so much. "I've always seen trees as silent witnesses to history," she reflected. "I never imagined they could also be messengers of something so dark." The Cairngorms forest, with its centuries-old oaks and majestic pines, continues to attract visitors. But now, rangers regularly check remote areas and warn tourists to report any unusual markings on trees, silent signs that can lead not to natural beauty, but to a very human horror hidden among the ancient shadows. What's up, guys? The horror stories in the dark forests are chilling even now, aren't they? If you're enjoying these scary stories, how about taking a quick stop and subscribing to the channel? Just click the sign up button below and take the opportunity to leave your like too. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more terrifying content like this. It's quick and makes all the difference. Now, shall we go back to our horror stories in the dark forests? There's still a lot of fear ahead. The underground shelter The rain was falling mercilessly when the group of hikers spotted the small opening in the hillside. They had been lost almost 6 hours ago in the dense Austrian forest after an unexpected storm erased the trail markings. With night approaching and the temperature dropping, the discovery of a possible shelter seemed providential. "It looks like some kind of old bunker," Martin commented, examining the partially overgrown entrance. "Maybe from World War II. The group, Martin, Elise, Thomas, and Katja, were university friends who got together annually for walks. Experienced, but not enough to predict the violent climate change that had surprised them in the mountains. After initial hesitation, they entered what appeared to be a narrow tunnel carved into the rock. The passage went down for nearly 20 meters before ending at a heavy metal door. Surprisingly, it was unlocked. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Thomas called, cautiously pushing open the door. The interior was surprisingly organized and well-equipped. A silent generator powered LED lights. There were shelves with canned food, bottled water, medical equipment, and even a small library. In the center, a table with an old radio and several notebooks carefully stacked. "This isn't a military bunker," muttered Elise, examining the supplies. "It looks recent." As they explored, Katja noticed a second door, this one locked with an electronic system. Next door, a monitor showed images from security cameras, revealing 3 small rooms occupied by people. In one of them, a young woman was reading a book sitting on a narrow bed. In another, a middle-aged man was exercising on the floor. In the third, an older woman slept. "My God," Katja whispered. "There are people trapped here." Before they could process their discovery, they heard footsteps. In the entrance tunnel, they quickly hid behind a partition. A tall man entered, carrying supplies. He placed the bags on the table and checked the monitors, looking pleased to see his guests. The man then turned on the radio and began recording in one of the notebooks, muttering, "Day 847 after the collapse. External radiation still at critical levels. The survivors under my protection remain healthy, thanks to the isolation measures." With horror, the group realized the truth. Those people didn't know they were kidnapped. They believed they were being protected from a global disaster that never happened. When the man left to get more supplies, the group acted quickly. Thomas managed to hack the security system using techniques learned from his IT job, while Martin and Elise searched for evidence about the kidnapper's identity. In the notebooks, they found a disturbing story. The man, who identified himself as Joseph, had originally built the bunker as preparation for the end of the world. But over time, his obsession evolved. He began kidnapping vulnerable people, lost hikers, homeless people, lonely travelers, and convincing them that a nuclear disaster had occurred. Some had been there for more than 3 years, completely isolated from the outside world. When they managed to open the internal doors, the prisoners' initial reaction was fear and confusion. The older woman, Elizabeth, refused to believe that she had been deceived for so long. "He showed us images of the destruction on the surface," she explained, shaking. "Radio transmissions about the radiation. It said we were the last survivors." The group needed to act quickly. Joseph would return at any moment. With difficulty, they convinced the 3 prisoners to escape. Although Elizabeth remained reluctant, a victim of years of psychological manipulation. They were almost reaching the exit when Joseph returned. Upon seeing the group escaping with "They're protected," his face turned to fury. "You don't understand. I'm saving you. There's only death out there." In the ensuing confusion, Joseph tried to stop them, but was restrained by Martin and Thomas. The group managed to escape into the forest, where, ironically, the rain had stopped and a starry sky shone, the first glimpse of the real world the prisoners had had in years. Hours later, when the Amstetten police finally arrived at the scene, they discovered that the bunker was much more extensive than it initially appeared. There were other compartments, some empty, others containing evidence of previous occupants who were not so lucky. The investigation revealed that Joseph Gruber, 54, was a former civil engineer with a history of psychiatric problems. He had built the underground complex over a decade, gradually expanding it beneath the national forest without anyone noticing. For the 3 survivors, readjusting to the real world would be a long and painful process. Years of isolation and psychological manipulation had left deep scars. Elizabeth, in particular, continued to question whether the outside world was truly safe, demonstrating classic symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome. The case shocked Austria, a country already touched by other similar incidents, such as the notorious Fritzl case in 2008, where a man held his own daughter captive for 24 years. For Martin, Elise, Thomas, and Katja, what was supposed to be just another annual walk turned into an experience that would change their lives forever. As Elise commented during the trial, "We thought we were lost in the forest, but we actually found people who were lost from the world." The bunker was later sealed off by authorities, but local hikers still avoid that area of the forest, where they say they can sometimes hear the distant sound of a radio broadcasting news of an apocalypse that never happened. 5. Lights between the trees. The moon was absent when Marcus Heller parked his car at the edge of the Brieselang forest, 30 kilometers west of Berlin. As a photographer specialized in night landscapes, I had heard about the mysterious lights that appeared between the trees since the 1980s, a phenomenon that, according to locals, manifested itself as a luminous circle that disappears in the same way it appears suddenly. Equipped with his long-range camera, tripod, and night vision equipment, Marcus entered the forest. The peaceful village of 11,000 inhabitants had become a point of interest for curious people and supernatural enthusiasts, despite typical German skepticism. After 2 hours positioned in a clearing, Marcus finally saw it, a soft glow between the trees, approximately 200 meters away. The light pulsed slightly, radiating an abnormal, dazzling metallic brightness, unlike any natural phenomenon I had ever photographed. As he adjusted his camera, he noticed something strange. The light did not remain static, but moved subtly, as if it waved sideways after a few minutes of static. It seemed almost intentional. Intrigued, Marcus decided to get closer. As he advanced through the dark forest, the light momentarily disappeared, only to reappear further on, as if guiding him. He remembered the reports he had read. Some attributed the phenomenon to the ghost of a 12-year-old girl murdered in the region, others to extraterrestrials, and there were even more scientific explanations about drained swamp gases. After 20 minutes of following the light, Marcus realized he had strayed considerably from the main trail. The forest had become denser, the terrain more rugged. That's when he heard muffled voices. Instinctively, he turned off his flashlight and crouched down. Through bushes, he glimpsed the unthinkable. 3 men talking in a small, makeshift camp. Next to them were devices that looked like modified flashlights, with colored filters and a remote control system. The next group of observers should arrive in an hour, one of them said, checking his watch. Klaus is positioned on the road to direct anyone curious to our area. The last one paid off well, replied another. That American photographer had top-notch equipment. With dawning horror, Marcus understood the truth behind the legendary lights of Brieselang. They were not supernatural phenomena, nor natural gases, but an elaborate trap. The group used remotely controlled lights to attract onlookers, tourists and supernatural enthusiasts to isolated areas of the forest where they were easily robbed. As he slowly backed away, Marcus stepped on a dry branch. The crack, amplified by the silence of the night, alerted the men. "There's someone there!" shouted one of them, pointing a powerful flashlight in Marcus's direction. What followed was a frantic chase through the dark forest. Marcus, disoriented, and without references, ran desperately while lights appeared in different directions, confusing his sense of orientation. He understood the ingenuity of the scheme. The lights not only attracted victims, but also disoriented them during escape attempts. By sheer luck, Marcus spotted the lights of a country road and managed to catch up, spotting a fourth man, presumably Klaus, who was waiting in a car. Seeing Marcus emerge from the forest in panic, the man took off quickly. At Brieslang police station, Marcus's report was initially met with skepticism. After all, stories about the mysterious lights had been common for decades. However, the photographs he managed to capture of the camp and the lighting devices provided concrete evidence. The subsequent investigation revealed a criminal operation that had been running for at least 3 years. The group had perfected the method, taking advantage of local legend to attract victims. It turned out that several tourists and photographers had reported robberies in the area, but the connection to the lights had never been established. More disturbingly, police found belongings at the campsite of people who had never reported the crimes, possibly foreign visitors who preferred not to engage with authorities in a foreign country, or who were convinced they had simply lost their equipment in the dark forest. Marcus Heller's case joined other documented incidents in the region, such as the one reported in 2017, when a car that was parked in the forest with observers of the phenomenon was surrounded by masked men armed with axes. At the time, the incident was dismissed as just a joke by young people in the region, but now it gained new perspective. For Brieslang residents, the revelation brought mixed feelings. On the one hand, the rational explanation demystified a phenomenon that had become part of local identity. On the other hand, it confirmed the suspicions of skeptics who never saw such light. As for Marcus, his experience has made him an advocate for safety in remote areas. Today, in addition to his night photography, he lectures on the dangers of following unknown lights in forests, whether they are supernatural or, as he discovered in the worst possible way, very human in their origin and intention. Brieslang forest continues to attract visitors, but now, when strange lights are spotted among the trees, locals know to call the authorities, not out of fear of ghosts or aliens, but because they know the true threat that could be lurking in the darkness. 6. The found diary-light rain was falling when Piotr and Agnieszka found the backpack. It was partially buried under damp leaves, next to a tree marked with a strange symbol carved into the bark. The couple, biologists from Warsaw, had planned 3 days of hiking in the ancient primary forest between Poland and Belarus. "It looks abandoned for a while now," Piotr commented, unzipping. Inside, they found damp clothes, a first aid kit, and, protected in a plastic bag, a hardcover notebook. On the first page, in carefully written English, "If you found this diary, I'm probably dead. He's hunting me. Maybe you'll be next." Intrigued, they leafed through the pages. The author, identified only as M, described how he had come to photograph the rare European bison. On the 3rd day, he realized he was being followed. Initially, he thought he was a forest ranger, until he found camouflaged traps in his path. "It's not an animal he hunts," read one entry. "It's people, tourists, hikers, people no one will immediately notice missing." The following pages detailed M's growing paranoia as he tried to escape. There were makeshift maps, trap markings, and an escape route, an abandoned old ranger station near the border. "We must take this to the authorities," insisted Agnieszka. "We are at least 6 hours away from any police station," replied Piotr. "And look, according to this map, the abandoned outpost is only 2 hours away. We could check first." Reluctantly, Agnieszka agreed. They followed the instructions in the diary, keeping an eye out for any sign of the traps described. The normally serene forest now seemed oppressive. After an hour, they found the first trap, exactly where the diary indicated. A pit disguised with foliage. Further on, they identified an almost invisible wire stretched at neck level. "The diary was right," muttered Piotr. "Someone is really hunting people here." That's when Agnieszka noticed something disturbing. "Piotr, look at this," she called. "The date of this entry. It is only 3 days ago." "Impossible," he replied. "Based on its condition, it must have been here for weeks." "And look at the handwriting," she continued. "On the first few pages it's consistent, but here it changes subtly, as if someone else had continued the story," added Piotr. At that moment they heard a branch break. Instinctively they crouched down. 50 meters away, a man was observing the area with binoculars. He was wearing camouflage clothing and carrying what appeared to be a rifle. "It's a trap," whispered Agnieszka. "The diary, the markings, he left everything to attract people to his territory." Silently, they retreated. The man seemed to be looking for something exactly in the direction the diary was leading them. With horror, they realized that each survival tip actually led potential victims down a predictable path. "We need to get back to the main trail," Piotr decided. Moving silently, they abandoned the suggested route. They used GPS to plot an alternative route, avoiding open areas. After an hour, they heard a low whistle in the distance. It sounded like a bird call, but too rhythmic to be natural. Moments later, another whistle responded from another direction. "It's not just one," Agnieszka realized. "There are at least two." They accelerated their pace. The sky was quickly darkening. When they finally saw the main trail lights, they saw a figure blocking their path, a man holding a flashlight. "Are you lost?" called him in Polish. "The forest is dangerous at night." Something in his tone caused Piotr to hesitate. "We're fine," he replied, keeping his distance. "Did you guys find anything interesting in there?" asked the man, his flashlight illuminating Agnieszka's hands, who was still holding the diary. "Nothing special," she replied, hiding the notebook. The man smiled. "Are you sure? Many people find valuable things in this forest." At that moment, they heard the whistle again, much closer. The guard turned around briefly. It was the opening they needed. Running along the trail, the couple managed to reach the visitor center. The police were immediately notified. The investigation revealed a disturbing operation. 3 men, ex-soldiers, had transformed the forest into their hunting ground. The diary was just one of several bait planted to attract victims. Authorities have found evidence linking the group to the disappearance of 7 tourists over the past 2 years. In an isolated cabin, they discovered macabre trophies, documents, and personal belongings of the victims. For Piotr and Agnieszka, the experience transformed their relationship with forests. As Agnieszka commented during the trial, "The real threat was never wild nature, but what lurks within it using our trust as a weapon." The original diary was never found. Authorities believe that M was likely the first victim, whose records were adapted by hunters to create their most effective trap. And for visitors to the Białowieża forest, a new warning has been added. Never follow instructions found in the forest, no matter how sincere they seem. The hidden community, the summer rain had finally stopped when the group of 5 friends spotted smoke through the trees. They had planned a 3-day hike through the remote trails of the Sandboys Mountains in southeastern Oklahoma, but a landslide blocked their original path, forcing them to detour through an unmapped area. "It must be a camp," Maya suggested, consulting the digital map that showed no structures in that area. "Perhaps they can show us an alternative path." The group, Maya, Ethan, Layla, Connor, and Jasmine, were college friends who got together annually for outdoor adventures. Experienced hikers, but unfamiliar with this specific part of the forest, decided to investigate the source of the smoke. After half an hour of walking along an almost imperceptible trail, they arrived at a surprising clearing, a small village with about 10 rustic cabins arranged in a circle around a central area. People worked in gardens, repaired structures, and cared for animals. It seemed like a completely self-sufficient community, isolated from civilization. "Visitors," announced a middle-aged man, approaching with a warm smile. "I'm Marcus, the guide of the Harmonia community. We rarely welcome travelers." Marcus explained that Harmonia was an intentional community founded 5 years earlier by people seeking to escape materialism and technology. The approximately 30 residents lived without electricity, internet, or regular contact with the outside world, growing their own food and following sustainability principles. Initially delighted, the friends accepted the invitation to spend the night. They were welcomed with a communal meal and stories about simple life in the forest. The residents seemed genuinely happy, although Layla, a psychology student, noticed something strange about their interactions. "They answer almost identically to the same questions," she whispered to Ethan over dinner, "like they memorized answers." During the night, Connor woke up to use the outhouse and noticed a gathering in the central cabin. Approaching silently, he heard Marcus discussing with other leaders. "The new ones are perfect. Ideal demographic diversity for Phase 3. Especially." The psychologist. Distraught, Connor shared what he had heard with his friends the next morning. They decided to thank the hospitality and leave immediately, but Marcus insisted on showing them the heart of the community first, a natural cave adapted as a meeting center. In the cave, they found unsettling evidence, detailed files on each resident, including previous identities and integration progress. On one board, photos of people with dates, some marked as complete, others as in progress, and some with a red X. Trying to leave discreetly, they were intercepted by Marcus and several residents. "You've seen too much to just walk away," he said, his tone now cold and calculating, "but they also saw enough to understand the value of our work." Marcus then revealed the true nature of Harmonia, a social experiment initiated by a group of psychologists and sociologists to study how identities can be reconstructed in isolation. The locals were a mix of original volunteers and recruited people, lost hikers and lonely backpackers who no one would immediately look for. "We are creating a better society, free from the traumas and conditioning of modern civilization," Marcus explained. "Some resist initially, but all eventually find peace in their new identities." The group tried to escape, but they were separated and confined to different huts. For 3 days, they were subjected to long orientation sessions, a combination of sleep deprivation, constant repetition of new personal stories, and isolation. It was Jasmine who discovered a way out. Pretending to accept the process, he gained enough confidence to access the supply hut, where he found an emergency radio. She managed to send a distress signal with approximate coordinates before being discovered. Tensions escalated when leaders realized someone had contacted the outside world. They accelerated the integration process, increasing psychological pressure on the group. Connor, feigning complete submission, managed to create a distraction that allowed them to escape during the night. Disoriented in the dark forest, the 5 friends followed a stream, hoping it would take them away from the community. Behind them, flashlights cut through the darkness as members of Harmonia pursued them. After hours of desperate escape, they saw helicopter lights, the rescue team responding to Jasmine's call. They were located and evacuated while authorities surrounded the community. Subsequent investigation revealed the true extent of the experiment. Harmony had been founded by a group led by Dr. Marcus Sheriff, a social psychologist whose grandfather had conducted the infamous Robbers Cave experiment in the 1950s, where children were manipulated at a camp to study intergroup conflict. Records showed that at least 17 people had been involuntarily recruited over the past 5 years. Some had completely assimilated new identities, unable to recognize their previous lives when confronted with family members. For Maya, Ethan, Layla, Connor, and Jasmine, the experience left deep psychological scars. As Layla commented during the trial, "The scariest thing was not the physical isolation, but seeing how human identities can be deconstructed and reconstructed when people are separated from their social anchors." Harmonia's case joined other documented unethical social experiments, such as the original Robber's Cave, reminding us that the line between scientific research and coercive manipulation can be dangerously blurred when human beings are treated as experimental subjects in isolated environments. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving dark forests. So what did you think? Which story gave you the most goosebumps? Will any of them make you think twice about venturing out on a trail when the sun starts to set? Tell me in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the terrifying world of dark forests, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing more scary content like this. And if you are not yet registered, take the opportunity now to sign up and activate the bell.